The fireplace brick trick was one of the most effective ways Depression-era families hid gold without drawing suspicion. Fireplaces were everywhere in Depression-era homes. They were permanent, heavy, sooty, and boring. That was exactly why they became one of the safest hiding places for gold, cash, and family heirlooms during the 1930s. While banks failed, safe deposit boxes were seized, and neighbors quietly turned on neighbors. Families needed places that looked ordinary but were rarely disturbed. The fireplace brick trick was not folklore. It was a practical, repeatable method used across urban row homes, rural farmhouses, and small-town dwellings in the United States and parts of Europe. This method relied on the fact that most fireplaces of the period were built with thick brick surrounds and lime mortar, not modern concrete. Individual bricks could be loosened, removed, and reset without visible damage. Once done correctly, even a mason would have trouble spotting the alteration unless they knew exactly where to look. The method depended on removable face bricks, not firebox bricks. A common misunderstanding is that valuables were hidden deep inside the firebox where flames burned. But that was rarely the case. Families avoided areas exposed to direct heat. Instead, they targeted face bricks along the outer fireplace surround, particularly near the hearth line or along the vertical sides. These bricks were decorative and structural, but they did not experience the same thermal stress as interior firebox bricks. Mortar in Depression-era construction was often soft lime mortar. With careful tapping using basic household tools, a single brick could be loosened without cracking neighboring masonry. The cavity behind these bricks was often deeper than expected, sometimes extending into unused voids between the chimney structure and interior wall framing. This space was dry, dark, and completely invisible once resealed. Gold was wrapped and sealed to survive heat, moisture, and, time. Families did not simply drop loose coins behind a brick. Gold coins were usually wrapped in wax paper, cloth, or oil-soaked fabric, then placed inside tin containers, glass jars, or small metal boxes. In some cases, melted candle wax was poured around the container to stabilize it and block moisture. This mattered because chimneys experience condensation cycles, especially in winter. Paper currency, when hidden this way, was treated differently. It was wrapped in oilcloth or sealed inside waxed envelopes, then placed farther from the chimney flue. Gold, being inert, was preferred for fireplace hiding. That is one reason so many gold coins from the period remain in near-mint condition when discovered decades later. The brick was reset so it blended perfectly with soot and age. Once the valuables were placed, the brick was reset using the original mortar dust mixed with a small amount of water or ash. Families often rubbed soot or fireplace ash onto the brick face to ensure it matched surrounding discoloration. The goal was not perfection, but invisibility through uniformity. An overly clean brick would attract attention. Importantly, they avoided marking the brick itself. No scratches, no symbols, no chalk marks. The location was remembered mentally or recorded indirectly, such as in a family Bible, recipe book, or ledger using coded language. This prevented discovery if the home was searched. Now, why did this trick work even during government seizures and inspections? Well, let me tell you, there's a clever reason behind it. Back during the 1933 gold confiscation in the United States, inspections mainly focused on banks, businesses, safes, and all those known hiding spots like floorboards and walls. But fireplaces were rarely dismantled. Inspectors just weren't tearing apart brickwork unless they saw some obvious signs of tampering. So, a sealed face brick that blended right into a soot-covered fireplace, well, it just didn't raise any suspicion at all. Even burglars honestly avoided fireplaces. They would go for drawers, mattresses, cabinets, and wall safes instead. Now, the psychological assumption that, nothing valuable would be hidden in something that gets burned really worked in the homeowner's favor. Actually, real documented discoveries prove this was not rare at all. Estate renovations done from the 1960s through the 1990s uncovered dozens of caches that were hidden behind fireplace bricks. In Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, and parts of the Midwest, contractors reported finding gold coins wrapped in 1930s, newspapers, or cloth bundles during chimney repairs. These were not isolated cases. Insurance records and probate documents confirmed that families passed down knowledge of the brick without ever retrieving the contents, sometimes because of sudden death or, displacement. In Europe, especially in Germany and France, similar methods were used during wartime currency collapses, reinforcing that this technique was practical, not just some cultural superstition. So, how does this knowledge apply today for survival-minded households? Well, that's something worth considering. Modern homes are built differently, but the principle remains relevant. Concealment works best when it uses permanent, boring structures that are never questioned. Fireplaces, chimneys, and masonry features still exist in many homes. While modern mortar is harder, removable decorative brick panels and stone surrounds can serve the same function if done discreetly. For those storing precious metals today, the lesson is not to replicate the exact method, but to adopt the mindset. Choose locations that blend into daily life and are unlikely to be searched or disturbed. Avoid anything that looks clever or tactical. Depression-era families survived because their hiding places looked accidental. How serious historians and restorers can identify authentic fireplace caches. For researchers and restorers, there are some subtle signs that distinguish authentic Depression-era hiding bricks from later alterations. You want to look for mortar composition differences that are, consistent with lime mortar. Also, check for soot continuity across the brick faces. A brick that carries uniform soot buildup over decades, well, that suggests it was in place long-term. And inside those cavities, original newspaper fragments, maybe some wax residues or even cloth fibers can help date the cache. Proper documentation really matters. These finds actually provide rare insight into how ordinary families responded to systemic financial collapse, especially when there aren't records, interviews, or official accounts to draw from. What this tells us about Depression-era survival thinking is, well, pretty remarkable. The fireplace brick trick really shows a mindset rooted in quiet preparedness rather than panic. Families didn't flee or advertise their fear. Instead, they adapted within their homes. They trusted permanence over portability and hid their wealth where it would outlast institutions. This was survival without drama, no bunkers, no weapons stockpiles, just thoughtful use of architecture and human psychology. Why this method still deserves study today. Understanding these techniques matters because financial instability, currency trust, and institutional fragility are not relics of the past. Studying how people adapted when systems failed gives modern viewers grounded strategies rather than abstract theory. The fireplace brick trick is not about hiding gold. It is about understanding how ordinary structures become tools for survival when design thinking meets necessity. If this kind of deep, practical history matters to you, subscribe to Battlefield of Survival. Share this with fellow historians and preparedness-minded viewers, and keep these lessons alive. The past only helps us if we pay attention to how people actually lived through it.